What's up, dudes? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at this GUNNR scope. This is an LPVO, and I believe GUNNR is a new company, kind of one of the new guys in the game. So this is their 1-10x28, and it is a 34mm tube, so that's pretty cool. Before we get further in here, let me go ahead and show you the unboxing.
You ready for the quickest unboxing portion of a video that I've ever done? It's already out of the box. You get the scope, you get bikini covers with it that do have clear ends on them. Right now there's a little protective piece of plastic on there, but you can shoot with those scope covers on if you want. The scope also comes with a couple of little care packages. One contains a chamois cloth, your battery for your illumination, an adjustment tool, a little throw lever, and an Allen key. I really like that they included that throw lever because that is always something I like to have on my scopes. The other little card in there came with the manual and everything in it. I also opted for the optional mount. So it's a 34mm mount. It's got the torque specs on it, very nice, and nice packaging on that as well. And it was all nicely packaged in that box with the two cards coming out of those two slots. So that's what you get in the box. Let's get down to the features of the scope and shoot it some.
All right, so now that you know what's in the box, and I did get the additional cantilever mount for it, but we're going to mount this scope on this little Stoeger bullpup right here. This is a Stoeger Bull Shark in 22, and I've got like way too much scope on it right now. That's a 5 to 25 power Orc Air scope, but we're going to put this thing on it and do a little bit of shooting. We'll do a tracking test. We'll look at various distances out there. But what you should know about this scope right off the bat is it does have a zero stop in the elevation turret. The turrets are really nice. It is an MOA scope, and it's got German shot glass. The ED glass in this thing is really nice. So far, from just me looking through it without a gun mounted to it, I'm pretty impressed. But I'll get a scope cam mounted on here. We'll take the side shot mount off of this guy. We'll put it on here. We'll show you some distances, and we'll do a tracking test at, I guess, 25 yards, since that's what this gun shines at, is 25-yard shooting. This is one of my chipmunk guns at the shed. But it'll be nice to take a look at tracking with an air gun versus like having it on an AR. Now, this is a scope that would totally find its home on an AR or even a 308 or something in the firearm world. But since we're going to use an air gun, we won't have to deal with recoil in the scope cam, and you'll be able to see exactly where it tracks to. So we'll take a close look at this after I get it mounted, and then we'll do some shooting.
All right, we've got this thing nicely leveled with our Wheeler leveling kit. That's the leveling kit, and then also the fat wrench to just make sure we have the exact torque specs perfectly, which are actually written right there and right there on the GUNNR mount. So that's nice. But let's just take a closer look at this thing. I've got the throw lever mounted now, which is pretty nice. And then it's really precisely machined. And I'm looking at this going, where's the zero stop? And it's actually inside the turret. So you rotate that right there, I guess, to set the zero stop. And nice feature to have. I always want a zero stop on my scope. So with that said, I think we have covered most of the features of this thing. So we're gonna go out there, put it on the bench, shoot, do a little sight in, and then check out some different distances so that you guys can get a feel for the glass.
All right, so it's a day later. I wanted to do the filming in a little bit more overcast than a direct super sunny day, because in my experience, it's going to show you a little bit of the capabilities of the scope, just a little bit better than having super bright daylight. Kind of nice to look at things in not super bright daylight, so you get an idea how clear and bright the glass is. But that's what it looks like on the little Stoeger bullpup here. I'll put a link for the gun in the comments and description. This thing is like 450 bucks and totally worth it. But anyway, back to the scope. So I think I showed you everything. It's a MOA scope, so it's quarter MOA clicks. So that's 1 inch equals 4 clicks at 100 yards. I got the nice mount with it, has the torque specs on it, and we're going to go ahead and mount up my side shot here. And what I'll do is we'll take a look at my 10-yard log pile, my 20-yard log pile, and my 25-yard log pile. And then what we'll do after that is a little tracking test where I'll go to my bench, set a target out at 25 yards, shoot it, dial way up, and then way back down and make sure it holds zero. And then we're going to take a look at various distances. I've got a diamond target here. I'll put this out at 50 yards so we can see what the clarity looks like on that at 50. I've also got my typical 4-inch plate out there at 150 yards, so we can take a look at that. And there's a few other landmarks out there that we can have a look at to see the performance of this scope. So first, let's take a look at the log piles. And from here on out, I think I will put it only on the scope cam. So no view of me. That way we have a blown up picture of what the scope looks like. And I think that'd be better for you guys while doing a review. I will add, before we get into it, I did measure the eye relief on this thing, and it's rather generous. It's about 4.25 inches. So, you know, you're a little bit farther back from the scope, which is kind of typical of an LPVO, and also typical of an LPVO. It doesn't have the most generous eye box. Like if you move your head side to side, you'll get scope shadow, which is kind of good because it does force you to have a consistent cheek weld every time. So when you're bringing that up, it's gonna kind of aid you in looking down scope properly rather than having a wonky cheek weld and looking down the scope at a different angle, which can cause a POI shift. So I don't really think that's really a deterrent. I think that's actually okay on an LPVO. And anyway, let's look at the scope, see what you guys think. All right, so let's start by looking at my 10-yard log pile, and you guys can cross your fingers and hope that a chipmunk comes out, because the purpose of these log piles is for me to rid the shed of chipmunks. They like to live in there, and so far this year I've shot over 70 of them out of there. But anyway, this is on 1 power, and what I did find about this scope is that on 1 power, it is like 1-to-1 with your actual vision. I know a lot of complaints about LPVOs are like, oh, they're not truly 1 power. But anyway, so that's, I'm gonna run through it at 10 yards with you here. That is 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5 power. And now you're gonna start to see it get a little blurry. Don't mind my actual crosshair. I'm gonna go back. That's the camera doing that, making it not super focused. In my view to my eye, the reticle is still very focused, but as we start getting up into 6, 7 power, the image is gonna start getting blurry at 10 yards. And that's because this LPVO and most LPVOs do not have a parallax wheel. So they have like a preset parallax of like 100 yards, and for shorter range stuff you're just going to need to dial back your magnification. So I find that at like 3 power it's like perfect for 10 yards. And let's show you the illumination too. So the illumination is just the center there, which if you're all the way zoomed out, it kind of makes it like a red dot, which is pretty sweet. So I like that. I'm going to turn it off just in case it messes with my side shot cell phone scope cam here. Let's look over at 20 yards. So that's that pile right there. I'll back all the way out to 1 power here, and then we'll start going in. So it's 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then after that you're gonna start getting blurry. That's all the way at 10 power. So I find that for that distance, again, 3 is gonna be like perfect. That's a little shadier area under the trees there, so I'll turn on the illumination. You can see what that looks like. That's at 6 power, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 1 is very dim. I'll crank it back to 6 for a second so you can see. But that's 3 power at 20 yards. Let's go out to, I'll turn the illumination off. We'll go out to the 25-yard pile. Back out to 1 power, okay, and we'll zoom in 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's all the way to 10, and it does get pretty blurry at 25 yards. Again, it's an LPVO. At closer distances you probably want to be like at 25 yards you should probably be on 3 power. Keep in mind these scopes are really made for like ARs, and you're not going to really be shooting too much stuff that close range, and if you are, you're probably even going to want it on like 1.5 or 1 power, and probably with the illumination on, so it kind of creates a little bit of a red dot sight scenario there. But anyway, next let's go and we'll shoot a couple shots at my 25-yard target out there and do a tracking test, and then we'll look at some further distances down the laneway. All right, so we're now in my heated shooting shack, brought to you by Vevor, and we're checking out my 25-yard target there. So that's on 1 power, 1.5, 2, 3, 4, and like I said, like 3 or 4 is going to be kind of perfect for 25 yards. There's 5. Oops, I skipped one. There's 6, 7, 8. 8 is right about there, and then 10 is there. So it's still a pretty good image at 25, but if you're looking down the scope rather than on my camera, it gets a little bit blurry. So what I'm going to do is back out to like 6 power, and hopefully you guys can see this. Let me turn off the illumination. I'll go ahead and see if I can get this so that I can see it on the side shot. Okay, that's probably good enough. That's actually at full power. So what I'll do is let's just take a couple shots. This gun has been sitting, but that one looks pretty empty. All right, so smacking the bullseye, we see that. All right, so let's do this. I am going to dial this scope way up and then way back down. All right, so that was 1 revolution. That was 2 revolutions. Wow, it's got a lot of travel. That was almost 3 revolutions. So I'm going to go back down. That is a lot of dialing, folks. Okay, I think that's where I was at before. And let's see. All right, I think that is 2 in the same hole. So that passes the tracking test for sure. So now that we've got that out of the way, let me back out. And see, to me, that looks really clean on my eye. And even right about there looks really clean at 25 yards. But let's take a look out to 50. I'll jack it back down to 1 power. All right, so right where my crosshairs are, I'll turn the illumination on for a second. That right there is that little white diamond plate. So let's just go ahead and zoom in. All right, that's 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They get tighter as you zoom in. 8, and that's full magnification. And for me, that looks perfect through my eye. Hopefully it looks okay on the scope cam footage. That's always an art to get that to work perfectly with a cell phone. But I think it does it okay justice. And just because we like shooting stuff, let's see if I can hold over a little bit and pop that thing. Nailed it. So that's pretty cool. All right, so that's 50 yards. Let me go and back this out again. So you see the far fence line back there? That is 118 yards. That concrete thing over there standing up in the distance is at 195 yards. So let's look to some further distances, because if you're not shooting an air gun and you're shooting an AR, those would be way more probable distances that you'd be using a scope for like this than on an air gun. So let me back all the way out so you guys can see my entire laneway. We'll go up a bit, and I'll just start zooming through the range to 118 yards, which is that fence. And you know what, man? To my naked eye, looking through this scope, it looks really good. Like, it is very crisp, very clear. I hope it's coming through on the scope cam. But for 10 power, that's pretty good. Let's keep it on 10 power. There's the sewer grate thingy that's out there at 195 yards. And I don't know if you can see it on the camera. I'm not looking at the camera. I'm looking down the scope right now, and I can see all the individual little hits on the top of that from when we used to put targets up there and shoot them. And then let me pan over. That right there is my 4-inch plate at 150 yards. And I can see it plain as day. Let me even back out. I'll go to let's go to like 6 power. So with the holdovers on this thing, if I had a slug gun or a long range gun, I could totally hit that. So usually it's right at about 18 MOA for most 22 slugs at this distance, and I can easily see the marks on the scope to be able to hit that. So that's pretty impressive. Not bad for a $620-ish scope. And for comparison, I do have a primary arm scope that I think cost me about $500 or $550, and I would say that this has the edge on the primary arm scope in terms of clarity. It's got that German shot glass, and it's pretty nice. So let's even look super far out. So that highway is at like 650 yards, that highway barricade, and man, it is pretty clear to me. Hopefully it's coming through on the camera here, but I'll zoom all the way out so you can see the massive distance that is. But you know, if you had a centerfire rifle, maybe a 223 or a 308, and you wanted an LPVO, this would definitely be able to take those long shots for sure. Very clean Christmas tree reticle where I can see all the holdovers and markings on it to take those long shots. So all right, I think I've shown you, you know, everything you need to see in distance. Hopefully I know I've said it 100 times, but hopefully the scope cam footage does it somewhat justice. But to me, this thing is pretty clear and nice. The only thing that is a kind of a deterrent is that, you know, you're not going to be able to use full power at the close ranges. So, you know, if I zoom into 10 on that 25 yard, to my naked eye, it gets kind of blurry. So backing it off to about 6 or 8 at 25 yards is perfect. Yep, and so that's what it looks like down the laneway at the various distances that I just showed you. And in my opinion, that's pretty respectable. I think this scope may end up living on this gun, but I also have a 223 rifle that could probably use an LPVO versus the red dot that I have on it. So I might actually transfer this to the 223 rifle. But anyway, that's what it is, man. All right, guys, so I think that's going to do it for the GUNNR Odin 1-10x28 LPVO scope. And I think I've shown you quite a bit about the scope. I've shown you the unboxing, what all it comes with. I've shown the clarity at various different yardages. Keep in mind, I'm using a side shot cell phone cam with a Samsung S10 from 2019 to do the filming. So hopefully it does it justice. But anyway, I've shown you different distances. We did a tracking test, which it gleefully passed. And one thing that I didn't mention in the rest of this review, which is very important, is this scope has a huge adjustment range. It has 170 MOA of adjustment in both the elevation and the windage turret. So what that's going to mean is you're basically not going to really run out of adjustment. So you're not going to need like a canted scope mount. If you're chasing that POI, you're just going to be able to easily adjust to it. Also, if you're taking super long shots and you want to dial rather than using the holdovers, you can go ahead and do that. You've got tons and tons of room there to dial, which is pretty cool. The other thing I liked about it was the illumination is pretty nice, the way that it's done with just the center reticle illuminated. So it makes it sort of like a red dot at the lower settings. And the actual reticle itself is pretty nice, the way it's a Christmas tree reticle. You don't see that too often on an LPVO. So glass quality, definitely there. The only other LPVO I have is a Primary Arms SLX, I believe it is. And it's a 1-to-8. And that one was about $500. This one retails for about $620, if I'm not mistaken. And I would say that this one has an edge on the Primary Arms one that I have for sure. Just keep in mind, if you're going to use it on an air gun and you're doing closer range stuff like I am here with this gun, you're going to get blurry images if you try to zoom to max magnification. So for things within like 25 yards, stick up to about 6 magnification. I find ideal is about 4 or 5. But if you go out to 50 yards and stuff, you can zoom to full power, no problem, and get a nice, crisp, clear image. So I think that's going to do it, guys. I've got a coupon code, I believe, from these folks, so I will drop that in the description and comments for you. I'll also drop some Amazon links. And, you know, if you guys are shopping through my Amazon links, thank you so much, man. That is what keeps the channel afloat. That's what keeps me from monetizing and keeps you from sitting through commercials on my YouTube content. So if you're doing any Amazon shopping and you happen to think of me, go ahead and click in through one of my links. You don't even have to buy whatever's in the link. simply clicking in and doing your regular shopping will still help out the channel. So appreciate you guys if you're doing that. And I think that's going to do it. Hopefully this was helpful, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.